here we enter the speculative, the great what if. Because let's be truly honest with ourselves. There is a 0.00000000001% chance we'll ever get an Animorphs video game on modern systems. The reprints didn't do so hot and are now cancelled. The series may be fondly remembered and worth re-examining, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this kind of thing, but the hard truth is that it hasn't stuck in the popular culture. Our best hope for an Animorphs game is actually the upcoming film adaptation of Ender's Game. Should it and the Hunger Games sequel be really, and I mean really, successful, then there's a chance studios will start mining a lot of older young adult fiction. Though I imagine they'd most likely go to Michael Grant's Gone series before any studios picks up Animorphs. Video games just don't get made from books. Even the 3 games we covered leaned on images from the television series for their box art. We need that visual medium tie-in in order for a licensed Animorphs game to ever get greenlit. Outside of that, the only other way to get any kind of new Animorphs gaming experience is if fans take it upon themselves to make it themselves, either as a flash game or maybe a modified version of existing games, perhaps even taking the ROM for the Game Boy Color game and improving on it. I mean, you couldn't do any worse. But even that seems unlikely, as Animorphs fan productions at that scale never seem to get off the ground. Just look at the more than half a dozen attempts to adapt the series into a graphic novel on DeviantArt. But this kind of speculation is a large part of any fandom, and more so for ones that are as small and as dedicated as Animorphs fandom. I know you all really want to see Animorphs book reviews more than anything else, to the point where you'll just flat out won't watch my other content and verbally tell me so in my comment section. Yeah, that doesn't get old. But the point in delving into these things like the Animorphs television show and the video games and the general content of 90s media is not just to review them in a slightly humorous manner, but to explore them as a collective personal event. For the people who get excited for my Animorphs book reviews, Animorphs was not just a series, but an experience that included extensions of the franchise, even if it was just periphery. As such, I plan to cover just about everything produced around the series, including the toys and board games, though those videos will be far less formal than the TV and video game videos. And a large part of this experience, along with most other fandoms, is the speculation. Speculation of what's going to happen next, sure, but also speculation of how it could have been, how we might have taken the books in a different direction if we were in charge, how we might cast our own Animorphs movie or television show, and how that show needs to be animated, production challenges be damned. It's what motivates people to do fan art, fan fiction, it's what keeps LiveJournal and obscure forum communities alive, and it's what makes people post over 80 comments speculating on how a modern Animorphs video game might look. Before we dig into the meat of it, I should mention that there are 2 more proper Animorph games released while the books were still being published. 2 little free games put on the internet, far too small and uninteresting to get their own videos. The first was called The Yerk Pool, a silly little Pac-Man ripoff where you run around a maze, avoiding enemies until you get a gorilla morph power that acts like the power pellet. Oh, and you play as Jake, because even in questionably official crap games made by one guy, Marco is still not allowed to morph a gorilla. I only have this one image of the game, as I can't get this ancient program to work on my modern computers. The other game is a little shockwave shoot-'em-up hosted on the official Animorphs website called Animorphs Hawk Rescue. The rest of the Animorphs have been captured by the Yeerks, and you must control Tobias to save them by flying around cities and shooting green energy bolts at floating Yeerks, Taxons, Hork-Bajir, and even the Blade Ship, all of which take 1 hit to kill. No, I don't know what you're firing, and I don't know why barrels of oatmeal heal you, and I don't know why the Yeerks are using giant yellow keys, and I don't know why Tobias looks like he just came off the set of Birdemic, and I don't know why the Yeerks use the 4-letter names of Earth animals as passwords, and... Oh, wait, is this actually a game based on the TV series? Well, then I guess it's in line with the stupidity from that show. So, as we start our approach towards this weird make-believe video game, the first question on our mind should be, what exactly is our setting, and how the games relate to the books they're based on. To start us off, Ryan Launer, the only person to submit a video response, has this to say.
My idea starts right where the series ends, with the surviving Animorphs preparing to ram the Blade ship, which is home to some new alien who no one cares about because it's never been hinted at before. Anyway, it has nothing to do with anything because the second before they actually impact the ship, everything stops. And, of course, the Animorphs all think this is the Ellimist again, but it's not. It's actually the aliens from number 41, the Familiar. This is the one where Jake wakes up as an adult in a world where the Animorphs lost. And it eventually turns out to be the work of this weird group of aliens who were apparently just running some kind of experiment, and we never hear or see them again. So it's just this big piece of disappointment all around. And the good thing about this, though, is that anyone else who wants to use them in some kind of Animorphs-related thing can do anything they want with them, because we're so vague on the understanding of them anyway that any interpretation is as valid as any other. So do whatever you want from here, and my idea is that for whatever reason, for whatever motivation you want to assign to them, the Animorphs will now be put back into several situations from over the course of the series. Just pour through any books for ideas for different levels. I'm sure there are plenty that would be good ones. But the point is, this will be a massive piece of continuity porn, and the major gimmick, if you can call it that, is that if you know the books, if you're a big fan from way back or just now, anything big enough to actually remember stuff like this, you will come into this with a much better idea of what you should do and how to do it better, sidestepping some mistakes that were made in those books.
Now that is certainly out there, but it runs into the immediate problem in adapting the series to games. How to balance your presentation for both long-term fans who knows its ins and outs of the series, and people who are completely new to the story. Ryan's idea may be a wonderful gift to the fans, directly continuing the series while explaining one of the biggest unsolved mysteries from one of the least important to continuity books in the series. But you would need to be a master storyteller to make it the slightest bit accessible to non-fans. Just imagine the questions people would have from the very first minute of the opening cutscene. Who are these people? What are they doing? Why are they on a spaceship? Why are they taking orders from a 19-year-old boy? Why is a bird on the bridge? Is it speaking to them through telepathy? How can it do that? Is the ship seriously called Enterprise? Is this some kind of weird Star Trek game? What's this monster they're talking to? We need to find a proper point of entry, some place to enter the story with minimal confusion. The obvious one, of course, is to just start at the beginning. Book 1, crashed spaceship in a construction site, kids learning of a secret invasion. But even this approach is problematic. If you just started the game from page 1, you'd probably have a good 20 minutes of opening cutscenes. The first point I can think of where it would be reasonable to take control of a character is when the kids are running away from the Hork-Bajir controllers in the construction site. 20 minutes of cutscenes are barely acceptable in a Metal Gear Solid game. In a licensed game about an old, young, adult science fiction series, it would probably be really frustrating. Now, I really like the game Okami, but I've only played it once and have no plans to pick it up again because the game opens with almost 18 minutes of unskippable cutscenes and dialogue. So how can you tell this story while giving players control as soon as possible? Well, the book starts in the late afternoon, early evening, with the characters winding down after school. So what if we started the game that morning? Allow the players to control the Animorphs during their school day routine. One thing the book always talked about was balancing a secret conflict with the normal school life, which actually reminds me a lot of the Persona series. A Persona-like Animorphs game would have you playing a normal life simulator during the day, where you have to manage friends, family, and homework, while switching to an action-oriented game at night where you go around and fight aliens. By starting in the morning, you can jump right into the life simulator part of the game, where the game can introduce and flesh out the main characters before throwing the conflict at them. Already you see how the type of story has a direct relation to the type of gameplay. But that's not the only point of entry. Stuffed Animal Advisor and The Girl Who Exists suggest playing an alternate version of David, while Similar Individual proposed playing one of the auxiliary Animorphs from later in the series. Basically the sixth Animorph approach, something the Choose Your Own Adventure style Alternamorph books subscribe to, but I'll get more into that when I actually cover those books. This approach has its own set of advantages and disadvantages. On the upside, it allows the people behind the game more freedom to modify the story to what best suits the style of the game, since it's pretty clearly taking place in an alternate perception, if not an alternate continuity from the books. They are beholden to the pacing of the books and can jump into gameplay in their own time. In terms of story clarity, there's a little more to juggle than if you just start with Book 1. But since a story from the perspective of a sixth Animorph would require the Animorphs to give a lot of expository dialogue and going through a lot of training, it's not entirely inaccessible. But on the downside, this also means that a lot of the emotional gut punches in the series are lost. It's one thing for Marco to tell you his mother is Visser 1. It's another to actually see Marco experience that moment in real time. Each Animorph has their own unique trauma that relates to the Yeerk invasion. Things like Tom, Visser 1, getting stuck as a hawk, your brother being killed by Visser 3, becoming reckless and ruthless from war, and, well, just being Cassie is traumatic in itself. A sixth Animorph would need a similar trauma to really feel the impact of the conflict. If you're playing an alternate David, then you have the whole Hork-Bajir destroys your house and capturing your parents thing, but you really have to come up with something new if you're going for the auxiliary Animorphs route. Actually, auxiliary Animorphs might be a little too late in continuity to be feasible. Way too much backstory to dig through. And of course, doing a game this way would make the Animorphs NPCs in their own game. This might suck if you're a fan of the books, and it's important to remember that, if either based off the books or off a theoretical film adaptation, this game is still a licensed title. Now, I'm going to have to plead ignorance here as to how much sway a studio or publishing house has over what goes into a licensed game, but if someone wanted to make a Harry Potter game where you only play Neville Longbottom, I can imagine Bloomsbury Publishing, Scholastic, and Warner Brothers all teaming up to curb stomp the idea. Of course, you could just do what the 3 official games do, set up the story in a quick little cutscene and kick the game off with the story already in progress. The best point of entry out of the 3 is Know the Secret, which presents the story through one of the actual characters instead of the authorless text box or the Ellimist narration in a game where the Ellimist doesn't actually play a part in the story. Wow, we spent all this time talking about how a game actually should start. I hope you're starting to see how complicated it is to design and program a game. Uh-oh, is my ulterior motive showing?